Hi everybody, welcome to part 7 of the virtual vacation. I guess I've seen the light. What do I mean by that? We're going to give a lighthouse tour, a Southern Maine lighthouse tour. And the reason I can only do Southern Maine is because there's, 80 lighthouses in Maine, and there's no way we could do all 80 in one tour. Now, as a captain, navigation, anything is a navigation aid. So a lighthouse is a navigation aid. A lighthouse could be a light on a pier, is technically a lighthouse. But we're going to be doing the traditional lighthouses, and we're going to start here at the Cape Neddick Light. It's right in York, Maine. It was built in 1874, and it cost about $15,000 to build this Nubble light. And it's been running ever since 1879, and like I said, it's still in use today. We're going to take a quick run through. We'll leave it going. We'll drive up and see how close we can actually get. Here we go. We're going to pan off to the left and right so you can actually see. Why do we need a lighthouse? Well, we're going to talk about that during the tour too. When I got my captain's license, we actually had to study.
You have arrived.
We had to actually study lighthouses. So we're going to talk a little bit about lighthouses and what they are and why do they have colors. Why is there certain colors? But there's a good view of the point that it's out on and the rocks and the jetties and some of the unique facts about lighthouses too. There's only really one authorized lighthouse in the entire United States out of all 1,000 lighthouses that is still manned. Anybody want to guess which lighthouse is still an active duty station? We'll talk about that as we go forward. We've driven about 20 minutes further north up the coast of Maine. Went through Cape Porpoise. You can see some lobster boats coming in from the ocean. Well, one of the ways they find their way in is through the Goat Island Lighthouse, which we'll show in a minute. Goat Island Lighthouse was like 1835, somewhere in there, and then it was rehabbed in 1859, and it shows the entrance to get into Kennebunkport Harbor. A lot of these lighthouses, like we mentioned earlier, are navigation tools, and they each have their own unique colors. The closer they are, they can. They're usually black and white with black stripes, or occasionally red and white. The red and white, if you do see that, it's because of the background. They're usually surrounded by cliffs or something that has to distinguish them in daytime. Black and whites are usually visible with nothing else around them. And what's really unique on a lighthouse is that its flashes are different. So if you're motoring along at night, you have to know the different flashes of the different lighthouses. So we also are going to see that some lighthouses are tall and some are short. The taller one, like you see here, they're usually built right on the water's surface. The shorter ones are usually on top of cliffs. But the higher the tower, the further out that it can be seen. And some towers were actually built so tall that when you were within a mile of the land, you couldn't see the light at night, and that became a problem. The airplanes sometimes, I guess the furthest lighthouse now, it's about 21 miles visible at night from the ocean, but there's some pilots that say they can actually see the lights out to 40 miles away. Today, a lot of these, like I mentioned earlier, are not manned. and we have a little challenge who can figure out what's the only manned lifeguard station. I will tell you in a minute. But they're all electronically run. They can sense the moisture in the air, and then they knows when to have the fog sirens go off, fog horns, and they know when to turn the lights on and off. It's all computerized now. It's kind of funny that the lighthouses themselves were actually an act of Congress, started in 1789. We traveled about another 30 minutes north up here to Portland. There's 6 lighthouses in this area. We're going to try to see if we can get these 6 in. And this is the Portland Headlight. It's a big tourist attraction. Like I say, Maine has a lot of lighthouses, but unfortunately most of them are on islands, so it's hard to even see them unless you get on a boat. Some of them are 10 miles offshore. So some of these southern Maine ones you're still able to see by just driving around. As we come over the rise on our left, you'll actually see the lighthouse come into view. And I think we'll see if we can swing around and get a good picture of it. Nice that a lot of this stuff is accessible by car. If you want to take a day trip, you don't have to get out and walk a lot. You can just stay in the parking lot. Every place we've come to so far has actually had a food stand and a rest area and so forth, so you can actually get out if you wanted to and enjoy it. I think we'll get a good view. So as we get our last glimpse here in Portland, this is the oldest working lighthouse in Portland, and it was actually started when George Washington was in his presidency, and it was rehabbed in like 1819 or something like that. And right next to it we're going to see the Fort Williams Park. So if anybody would like to come up, and it's a nice flat area, you can try it out, see this beautiful lighthouse. You can go inside and look around, but they only open the tower up once a year, sometime in September. But this Fort Williams Park, they have bird watching areas, they have kite flying areas, they have nature walks down by the ocean itself. So if you'd like to just come up and enjoy a day, they have a picnicking area. You can bring your own barbecues. So it's a nice area, Fort Williams Park, right up here in Portland. And there's a few other lighthouses here in Portland. Let's see what comes up next. Oh, and there is a kite flying area too here at Fort Williams. I don't know if we'll see any kites flying today, but there is a kite flying section. We'll get one last view overlooking this entire area, and then we'll head out to our next lighthouse. Oh, and this Fort Williams too, as its name applies, was a fort, so when you walk around the grounds you can see the different areas, the barracks, the gun emplacements. There's an old cannon that they actually dug up, and that's on display near the lighthouse itself. And you can get an area of, get an idea of the layout of the entire fort. There's areas you can stop along the way and read little plaques and stuff. So one last look off to our right, you'll see a small beach and the ocean here at Fort William. Well, as we were leaving Portland Headlight, I don't know if you saw Ram Island Ledge Light off to the left and off to the distance. That was originally back in 1855. It was a 50-foot wooden tripod. It's about 77 feet above sea level. It's pretty low. And in 2001, the light was converted to solar power, but you couldn't really see it, and there was nowhere for me to... You could see it off in the distance. So I wanted you to know that we are now at the two lights in Cape Elizabeth. You'll see off in the distance. There was actually two lights here. One of the lights, the west light, rotated, and this light that you're seeing now is a fixed light. It was shut down in 1924, and it was blacked out during World War II, but it's still lit today. And it's the most powerful beacon on the New England coast, and it's visible for 27 nautical miles. There's about 41 acres surrounding us with rocky headlands, and you can actually stop here, and they have the Lobster Shack restaurant, so you can sit here and watch the light. If you want to stay here at dusk, you'll actually see it lit up, and you can have the nice views of Casco Bay, the open Atlantic, if you want to just sit here and look around. It's a beautiful area. So that is what is left, the one light that is left of the original two lights. Well, here we are in South Portland at the Portland Breakwater, the bug light. South Portland. We decided to jump out of the car for a minute. Still all flat, easy walk. This is kind of a unique shape. They say it's reminiscent of a spark plug, and they actually, when it was built, it wasn't attached to land, and in the 1950s they attached a breakwater, so you can actually walk out there and check it out. But I guess this was such a heavy area for vehicles, to vessels to run aground, that they were forced to put that in. Very interesting area. You'll see forts off to the right and left. There's a lot of shallow, rocky water out around here, so that's why this light had to be put in. And if you look, I don't know if you can see the top, but you'll actually see, we'll try to focus in on the light itself. You'll actually see the light going on and off. And the thing about these lights is, just like any navigation, each lighthouse is unique. It could be one flash every 5 seconds. It could be 2 or 3 flashes every 2 seconds, and you'll know on your chart that you look at exactly where you are by the time of the flash. These lighthouses at one point were all oil, so they did have open fire. Some of them were actually whale oil and lanterns that would be put up there. And they're all electrified now, electric lights. And the lantern itself is the area that holds the reflector. They call that the lantern. And once again, you'll see the black and white colors that make it unique. So it will be spark plug, black on top, white in the middle, black on bottom. You look on the chart and you'll know exactly where you are and how many flashes that you should be seeing from that tower. So we talked about colors, black, white, red, stripes. We've talked about lights now, but what we haven't talked about, well, the lights are the optics. What we haven't talked about is the different signals. So why do you need signals? Because, well, on a nice clear day like this, you can see the lighthouse, and at night, on a nice clear night, you could see the light. But what about when there's fogs? Well, there has to be a special signal when you have to deal with fog. And fog signals were introduced, yes, at the Boston Light in Boston, Massachusetts. And it was a cannon. And they came out with other signals like whistles and sirens and trumpets and bells and horns. There's different types of horns. I'm trying to give you an example here that you'll hear out on the ocean. Some of them might be bee-oo, if that sounds familiar. That's actually called a bee-oo horn. And then they have the that type of horn. And yes, it's called a burr horn. And those are both for fog. And also, what happens if there's an emergency? Well, they have these things they used to call light ships, which have lights and whistles and horns, and they can actually be brought out in an emergency. If a lighthouse actually goes down, you would park a light ship. One of the last light ships that was actually still being used was actually up to 1984. It was the Nantucket light ship. I actually helped refit that with new generators on board. The Nantucket light ship would go out in some of the worst imaginable weather just to go out and anchor itself and be there so vessels wouldn't get stranded. So would anybody, we talked about different types of stuff, but while we're here and we have a few minutes and there's not a lot of traffic, would anybody care to guess what the first lighthouse there ever was that actually used electricity? No? Well, I'll give you a hint. It was in 1886. No? Still no guess? Well, guess what? It was actually the Statue of Liberty. That's right. It was the first, and they used it as a lighthouse, the Statue of Liberty. So if anyone's interested, and if you want to seek your fortune, if you wanted to be a lighthouse tender, it was actually pretty good pay. It was considered middle-class pay. And back when lighthouses first started, you made a whopping $250 per year. That is about $16,000 at today's rate. If you really wanted to seek your fortune, you could actually make your way out to the western part of the country. And during the gold rush, lighthouse tenders, lighthouse keepers in the west made about $1,000 per year. Like I said, all of the lights in the United States are automated, and one of the questions I asked is, what is the one lighthouse that is still tended today? And that is actually the Boston Light, because it's the oldest station in America, and it has been, and according to Congress, it always will be staffed. It's on Little Brewster Island. You can actually go, and there's a little tour that leaves, and it'll take you out around the Boston Light. It's a nice tour, and they talk about the light itself. They bring you right up close to it, and they'll show you all of the, you can see the crystals that were actually made by Tiffany inside there. One thing else about being a lighthouse keeper, and then I won't bother you anymore, it was one of the first jobs in the United States that would grant jobs available for women in the 19th century. And we see off in the distance, we'll see that once again before we leave, that beautiful spark plug shaped lighthouse. And if you can just imagine, we talked about the oldest lighthouse in the United States that was in Boston, and that was actually destroyed by the British in 1784. And that seems like a long time ago until we realized that the first lighthouse was actually in Egypt, and it was constructed about 300 to 280 BC. It was 450 feet high. It was considered one of the wonders of the ancient world. Spain has one that was actually erected in 20 BC. And over the cliffs of Dover in the UK, they have a lighthouse that was actually Roman built in approximately 40 AD. So we're going to move on to our next lighthouse, and stay tuned.